Welcome to Life Story 999. Today, we bring you an incredible story about hidden identities, resilience, and unexpected realizations in a hospital where power dynamics often favor those at the top. Dr. Lawrence made the mistake of underestimating a nurse, but he had no idea she was actually a superior. Watch how a simple misunderstanding unfolds into a life-changing lesson. Don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more powerful stories. Maya Thompson was known throughout her community for her humility and unwavering dedication to her work. At 42 years old, Maya carried herself with a quiet but undeniable confidence that could only come from years of perseverance through hardship and a relentless pursuit of her goals. Today, she found herself stepping into a familiar role she hadn't performed in years, filling in as a nurse while one of her colleagues was on leave. Despite her high-ranking position as the medical director, Maya slipped into her old nurse uniform without hesitation, ready to assist wherever she was needed. Growing up, Maya had faced more challenges than most. She came from a struggling neighborhood where opportunities were scarce, and the odds of success were stacked against her. But she never let her circumstances determine her future. Instead, they fueled her ambition. She put herself through medical school while working long hours as a nurse, tirelessly studying at night and on weekends. She was determined to break through the barriers that surrounded her. Sleepless nights and unrelenting determination propelled her toward a career where she could make a real difference, first as a nurse, then as a physician, and eventually as a respected medical director. But even in her leadership position, Maya never lost sight of where she came from. She knew that every role, from the janitorial staff to the senior doctors, was integral to the well-being of the hospital's patients. She believed no job was beneath her, a perspective that had earned her the respect and admiration of her team. Maya understood that true leadership was not about titles or power. It was about serving others and leading by example. Today was no exception. When her team needed her to fill in, she did so without complaint, putting on her scrubs and stepping back into the role that had started it all. Walking through the hospital halls in her nurse's uniform, Maya greeted patients warmly, listened to their concerns, and diligently took notes. To an outsider, she looked like just another nurse, but to those who knew her, she was much more, a source of inspiration and a reminder that greatness often comes from humility. As she checked in on patients, her calm demeanor and dedication brought a sense of comfort to everyone around her. Her team watched her with admiration, knowing they were fortunate to have a leader who never forgot her roots. Most of the hospital staff knew Maya's true position, but her modesty meant she rarely drew attention to her rank. She was simply Maya, approachable, compassionate, and always willing to lend a hand. She moved seamlessly through the busy ward, helping where she was needed, ensuring that no patient went without care and no nurse felt overwhelmed. Her willingness to step back into scrubs and work alongside her team was a testament to her character and a reminder to everyone that leadership isn't about standing above others. It's about lifting others up and being there when it matters most. The hospital where Maya Thompson worked was known for its prestigious reputation. It catered to the wealthy and influential, providing top-tier facilities and state-of-the-art technology. However, beneath the polished exterior lay deep-seated flaws. The hospital was a place dominated by hierarchy, where the divide between doctors and support staff was stark. The doctors were regarded as the pinnacle of the institution, while the nurses and other support staff often found themselves at the bottom of the social ladder, struggling for recognition. Among the doctors, Dr. Gregory Walters stood out not only for his skills, but also for his unyielding arrogance. Middle-aged, with years of experience under his belt, Dr. Walters had earned respect for his medical prowess, but his attitude towards his colleagues, particularly the nurses, left much to be desired. He had a way of speaking to them that suggested they existed only to serve his needs, his tone often dripping with condescension. In his mind, respect was something to be reserved for those who matched his status, and teamwork was merely a matter of everyone obeying his orders without question. Dr. Walters, already feeling the strain of a packed schedule, strode into the ward with impatience etched on his face. He scanned the room quickly, his gaze falling on Maya, who was standing by a patient's bed, updating their chart. He approached her without hesitation, his voice cutting through the air like a knife. "Are you planning to just stand around all day, or are you actually going to get these patient files updated?" he barked, his tone dripping with condescension. "I need this done immediately. Can't you follow simple instructions?" The tension in the room was immediate. The other staff members glanced at each other uneasily, their eyes flicking towards Maya, who looked up from her work with a calm and collected demeanor. She gave Dr. Walters a polite nod, her expression neutral. "I assure you, doctor, everything is under control," she replied smoothly, her tone devoid of any irritation. Dr. Walters, however, was not interested in her assurances. He dismissed her response with a wave of his hand, as if she were nothing more than an inconvenience in his busy day. "This hospital doesn't have time for people who slow things down," he snapped. "We need efficiency. Get it done." He turned sharply, already moving towards the next patient, his mind clearly elsewhere. Maya felt the weight of the moment as the eyes of her colleagues lingered on her. They could sense the discomfort, the imbalance of power playing out in front of them. Maya, however, refused to take the bait. She knew exactly who Dr. Walters was. His reputation for treating the nursing staff as if they were mere assistants was well known, but she chose to remain composed. She could have easily corrected him right then, revealing her true identity as the medical director. It would have brought his arrogance to an abrupt halt, but Maya was not interested in public humiliation or a fleeting victory. Instead, Maya chose the path of patience. She was focused on the bigger picture, on changing the culture of the hospital in a meaningful way, rather than simply embarrassing one individual. "I'll make sure everything is handled appropriately, doctor," she responded quietly, her voice steady and calm. It was a simple statement, but it carried a quiet authority that seemed to go unnoticed by Dr. Walters as he strode away, oblivious of the fact that he had just belittled his superior. As Dr. Walters left the room, the atmosphere slowly began to relax. The nurses exchanged glances, some filled with admiration for Maya's composure, others with disbelief at Dr. Walters' behavior. One of the junior nurses approached Maya, her eyes wide with concern. "Are you okay, Maya?" she asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Maya offered her a reassuring smile. "I'm fine," she said gently. "It's not the first time and it likely won't be the last. But we have to stay focused on what really matters, the patients. Everything else, we can handle in time." The young nurse nodded, clearly still unsettled by the interaction, but she took comfort in Maya's steady presence. Maya turned back to her work, her movements deliberate and unhurried. She understood that moments like these were part of the reason she had worked so hard to rise through the ranks. It wasn't just about achieving personal success. It was about being in a position where she could influence change, where she could advocate for those who didn't always have a voice. Maya knew that today's confrontation was merely a symptom of the larger problem within the hospital, the entrenched hierarchy that placed some staff above others, making respect a conditional commodity. She had faced challenges far greater than an arrogant doctor, and she wasn't about to let this moment deter her from her goals. She would continue her work, both in caring for her patients and in addressing the systemic issues that plagued the hospital. As she continued her rounds, Maya made a mental note to bring this incident up in her next meeting with senior management, not as a personal grievance, but as an example of the kind of behavior that needed to be addressed if they were to create a truly respectful and supportive work environment. For now, she would focus on her patients and her team, but she knew that change was on the horizon, and she was ready to be the catalyst for that change, one step at a time. As the day progressed, whispers began circulating throughout the hospital. The tension from the earlier confrontation between Dr. Walters and Maya had not gone unnoticed. Many of the nurses and other staff members who had witnessed the scene were appalled by the blatant disrespect Dr. Walters had shown. But what truly stunned them was when they learned who Maya truly was. Some of the senior nurses had always known, but now the news was spreading fast. Maya Thompson wasn't just any nurse. She was the medical director of the entire hospital. The realization hit the staff hard. They could hardly believe that Dr. Walters had treated the very person responsible for managing the entire hospital with such disdain. The person they all looked up to and admired for her leadership and dedication had been subjected to belittling remarks, as if she were no more than an inexperienced junior. For Maya, the day had left her feeling a deep sense of disappointment. It wasn't only Dr. Walters' behavior that weighed on her. It was the entire culture within the hospital that had allowed such treatment to go unchecked. Later that evening, after completing her rounds, Maya returned to her office, feeling the fatigue from the day both physically and emotionally. She picked up her phone and dialed her closest friend and confidant, Naomi, who had been by her side since their early days in medical school. Naomi answered almost immediately, sensing the exhaustion in Maya's voice. "It's not about me, Naomi," Maya began, her voice a mix of frustration and determination. "It's about the culture here. We have to change it, not just for me, but for everyone who faces this kind of treatment." Naomi sighed on the other end of the line, her empathy palpable. "You're right, Maya. But remember, you have more influence than most. You're in a position where you can actually make a difference. It's not easy, but if anyone can do it, it's you." Naomi's words struck a chord with Maya. She knew she had the power to initiate change, but it wasn't going to be an easy journey. After ending the call, Maya sat at her desk, her thoughts racing. She opened her laptop and began drafting a formal report. This was not going to be a personal complaint against Dr. Walters. Maya was thinking bigger than that. The problem went far beyond one individual. It was about the entire culture that had been allowed to persist for far too long, a culture where respect was often conditional, based on rank and perceived importance. She emphasized the importance of training on unconscious bias, respect, and effective communication. These were not optional skills. They were essential for every staff member, from the custodians to the senior doctors. She knew that if the hospital truly wanted to uphold the values it claimed to stand for, they needed to address these issues at their root. The next morning, Maya submitted her report to the senior management team. She knew there would be resistance. Change was rarely welcomed, especially in environments as entrenched in hierarchy as the medical field. But she was determined. This wasn't just about her own experience. It was about the nurses, the technicians, the administrative staff, and even the junior doctors who deserved to work in an environment where they were treated with dignity. Word of the confrontation continued to spread, and soon enough, even the hospital leadership heard about it. There was a sense of unease among the management, and they knew that something had to be done. Maya's report was timely, and it provided a path forward, a way to address the underlying issues that had led to this incident and others like it. A meeting was called later that week, bringing together senior management, department heads, and representatives from different areas of the hospital. Maya was invited to present her report and share her perspective. As she stood in front of the room, she could feel the weight of the moment. This was her chance to make a real difference, to speak not just for herself, but for all those who had ever felt belittled or undervalued. What happened the other day wasn't an isolated incident. Maya began, her voice steady. It's a symptom of a much larger problem that affects everyone who works here. We can't expect to provide the best care for our patients if we don't treat each other with respect. Every role in this hospital is crucial, and every person deserves to be treated with dignity, regardless of their title. Her words resonated with many in the room. Heads nodded in agreement, and Maya could see that her message was beginning to take root. She spoke about the importance of empathy, about understanding that every staff member, no matter their position, contributed to the hospital's success. She highlighted the need for comprehensive training programs that address biases and fostered a culture of inclusivity. As the meeting concluded, Maya felt a sense of cautious optimism. She knew that change wouldn't happen overnight, but she had taken the first step. Senior management agreed to implement new training sessions focused on respect and communication, and to create an anonymous feedback system where staff could report issues without fear of retaliation. Dr. Walters, too, heard about the meeting and Maya's speech. He was stunned when he learned that the nurse he had spoken down to was, in fact, the medical director. The The realization left him humbled, and for the first time, he began to reflect on his behavior. Perhaps it was time for him to change as well. For Maya, this was only the beginning. The road ahead was long, but she was ready for the challenge. She knew that real change required persistence, and she was committed to seeing it through, not just for herself, but for everyone who worked in the hospital and ultimately for the patients who depended on them all. A few days later, a meeting was called by the senior hospital management involving Dr. Walters and Maya Thompson. Dr. Walters entered the boardroom with a confident stride, completely unaware of the gravity of the situation he was about to face. He assumed it was just another routine discussion concerning staff matters, and he had no reason to think otherwise. He was used to these meetings, most of which ended with a reminder to be a bit more polite and a pat on the back for his excellent medical skills. The head of hospital management, Mr. Andrews, opened the meeting with a serious tone. Dr. Walters, we've called this meeting to address some recent complaints about your behavior towards staff, Mr. Andrews began, looking at Dr. Walters with a firm expression. Dr. Walters raised an eyebrow, a hint of defensiveness crossing his face as he shifted in his seat. Look, I was just doing my job, Dr. Walters said, attempting to brush the concerns aside. I had to ensure that everything ran smoothly, especially given how busy it's been lately. It wasn't anything personal. His tone conveyed an air of nonchalance, as if his actions were entirely justified by the pressures of his workload. Maya remained silent, her eyes fixed on Dr. Walters, waiting for the right moment to speak. Mr. Andrews listened to Dr. Walters' defense, but it was clear that he was not convinced. He gestured towards Maya, signaling it was her turn to speak. Maya took a deep breath before beginning, her voice calm, yet carrying an unmistakable weight. Dr. Walters, she started, what you didn't realize the other day is that this issue goes beyond mere efficiency. It's about how we treat each other in this hospital. It's about respect, something that should be extended to every staff member, regardless of their position. She paused for a moment, watching as Dr. Walters' expression changed, confusion beginning to cloud his features. And what you also didn't realize, she continued, her gaze unwavering, is that I am the medical director of this hospital. The room fell silent. Dr. Walters' face visibly drained of color as the realization of what she had just said sank in. He blinked, his confident demeanor suddenly shattered, replaced by a look of shock and disbelief. For a moment, he seemed at a loss for words, his mouth opening and closing as he struggled to form a response. Mr. Andrews cleared his throat, breaking the silence. This incident, Dr. Walters, is not just about your interaction with Dr. Thompson, he said, emphasizing Maya's title with a pointed look. It highlights a much deeper issue within our hospital culture, one that needs to change. The way we treat our colleagues has a direct impact on the quality of care we provide to our patients. Dr. Walters swallowed hard, his eyes shifting from Mr. Andrews to Maya, who still watched him with a calm but firm expression. The weight of his mistake was heavy on him now. He had humiliated the very person who had worked tirelessly to create an inclusive environment in the hospital. The person who was not only a superior, but also a respected leader who genuinely cared about the well-being of every staff member. I didn't know, Dr. Walters stammered, his voice shaky. I apologize, Dr. Thompson. I didn't mean to, he trailed off, the usual arrogance gone from his voice, replaced by genuine regret. Maya nodded, her expression softening slightly. Thank you for your apology, Dr. Walters, she said. But this isn't just about me. It's about how we move forward as a community here. We need to ensure that every member of our hospital, regardless of their position, is treated with the respect they deserve. That's the only way we can truly provide the best care for our patients. Mr. Andrews nodded in agreement, his gaze still on Dr. Walters. We will be implementing changes, effective immediately, to address these cultural issues. This includes mandatory training on respect and communication for all staff members. It's time we ensure that every person here feels valued and supported. Dr. Walters nodded slowly, still visibly shaken, but beginning to understand the broader implications of what had happened. "I understand," he said quietly. I'll do better." The meeting concluded with a sense of resolution, but Maya knew this was only the beginning. The changes that needed to happen wouldn't be easy, but they were necessary. As she left the boardroom, she felt a sense of determination settle within her. There was much work to be done, but she was ready for it. This was about more than just one incident. It was about transforming the hospital into a place where everyone, regardless of their role, was treated with the respect they deserved. The meeting between the hospital leadership, Dr. Walters, and Maya Thompson had far-reaching consequences. It became a turning point for the entire institution, setting in motion much-needed changes that would transform the hospital's culture. The administration decided to implement new policies aimed at ensuring a respectful and inclusive work environment for everyone, regardless of their position. Diversity and respect training sessions were scheduled for all staff members, from the custodians to the top-level doctors. Maya took an active role in these sessions, determined to make sure they addressed the deeper issues that had long plagued the hospital. Dr. Walters, meanwhile, began his own journey of transformation. Initially, his apology had been a mere formality, a response to the pressure he was under rather than a genuine recognition of his behavior. But as the days went by and as he attended the mandatory training sessions, he began to reflect on his actions and the impact they had on others. Slowly but surely, Dr. Walter started to make real changes in how he interacted with his colleagues. He began to engage in the training sessions not just as a participant, but as a learner, truly listening to the experiences of others. He even took it upon himself to share his own experience during a session, admitting his mistakes openly and acknowledging the harm his behavior had caused. This act of vulnerability surprised many of his colleagues, but it also earned him a newfound respect. They saw that he was genuinely trying to change, and that made all the difference. As the weeks passed, the hospital began to change. Conversations about respect, bias, and inclusivity that were once whispered in private now became part of the daily dialogue. Staff members began to feel more comfortable speaking up when they witnessed inappropriate behavior, knowing that their voices would be heard and taken seriously. The atmosphere started to shift, becoming more supportive, collaborative, and unified. It was no longer a place where a hierarchy dictated who deserved respect. It was becoming a community where every individual felt valued. Maya's actions had sparked a movement that extended beyond the hospital walls. Other institutions began reaching out, seeking guidance on how they could improve their own work cultures. Maya was invited to speak at conferences and share her experience, not as a personal victory, but as a case study in how systemic change could start from one incident and ripple outward. She spoke about the importance of empathy, the need to confront biases, and the value of treating every person with dignity. The changes were not easy, and there was still much work to be done. But for Maya, seeing the progress was enough to keep her motivated. She knew that real change was a journey, not a destination. The hospital was far from perfect, but it was on the right path, and that was what mattered most. The transformation was underway, and it was being led by people who were ready to create a better, more inclusive future for everyone. Maya Thompson's story is a powerful testament to the idea that true leadership goes beyond titles and authority. It is rooted in empathy, respect, and the courage to advocate for others. By navigating a challenging situation with grace and using it as a catalyst for systemic change, Maya exemplified the kind of leadership that inspires genuine transformation. Her ability to remain composed in the face of disrespect and her determination to focus on the bigger picture set the tone for what true leadership should look like. Maya's actions sparked a cultural shift within the hospital, fostering an environment where every individual, no matter their role, felt valued and respected. It was no longer about hierarchy dictating who deserved dignity. It was about recognizing the importance of every contribution, from the custodial staff to the senior doctors. Her efforts showed that a leader's role is not just to lead from above, but to elevate those around them and ensure that everyone has the opportunity to thrive. Dr. Walter's journey from arrogance to humility further highlights that meaningful change is possible when individuals are willing to confront their own biases and take responsibility for their actions. His transformation was not immediate, but through reflection, vulnerability, and a willingness to learn, he was able to grow into a better colleague and a better person. This journey of personal growth resonated throughout the hospital, showing that no matter one's past actions, there is always an opportunity for change and improvement. The changes implemented at the hospital, from diversity and respect training to creating an environment of open dialogue, were just the beginning. Maya's influence extended beyond the hospital walls as other institutions began reaching out, inspired by the cultural shift that had taken place. She became a voice for those who felt unheard, advocating for systemic change in the broader medical community and emphasizing the importance of empathy, inclusivity, and respect in every aspect of healthcare. Maya's story reminds us all that the power to create lasting change often lies within our willingness to act, even in the face of adversity. It is a reminder that real leadership is not about asserting authority, but about uplifting others and working towards a shared vision of respect and equality. It is about understanding that every person, regardless of their position, has value and deserves to be treated with dignity. Thank you for joining us on Life Story 999. If Maya's story moved you, please give this video a thumbs up, share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories like this one. Let's continue to support one another, learn from each other's experiences, and work towards creating a world where everyone is valued and respected. Together, we can make a difference, one story at a time.